Okay, so I've done a couple rows of the ribbing, and before I go any further, I want to talk to you a little bit about tidying things up and looking for mistakes and fixing mistakes before they get too far along. One of the nice things about this pattern is it is a rib, so that you can pretty much see if something is out of sorts pretty quickly. But what throws it off is when you do those increases and your rib does a little jog, because then you don't have that straight line going up all the way. Like I have it some places, but I don't have it everywhere. All right? So we're going to look at that. But I'm one that as I'm going, I don't like having like all these strings and stuff here. Now the white stuff is my counting thread, so I'm just going to fold that back and get that out of the way. And this green is my working thread. But these two pink guys and this other green guy, those are extraneous, and I can deal with those now. One of the things, you won't have all of these ends because you're not going to use two different threads to start your knitting. However, as long as I have it, let's take advantage of the opportunity for me to show you how I would do this. If you wanted to do a different color edging, how you could finish off those edges and make it look nice. So what I'm going to do first is pull the green, my working yarn, out of the way. And I'm just going to look at the pink. So we've got this pink that's the end piece, this pink is the beginning piece. And basically, remember how I described that we were working in the round and we don't actually connect where we start and stop each round? Well, here I can actually do that. And by doing that, it really helps close up that jog that edge is virtually impossible to see. So what I'm going to do is put this end on my darning needle, and I'm going to follow and trace the trail that this thread is making because that's the one I end it with. So if I look at this thread, give it a tug, I can see this is what's tightening up, which means this thread is coming from here to here. So I'm going to do that. All right, and I'm going to try to make sure it's at the same tension as everything else. And then it comes around and goes here to here. Let me pull this end here. And then it comes here and goes inside. So I'm just going to pull that inside there. So all I did with that pink was to follow the previous one that was there before it. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this pink, but I'm going in this direction now. So I'm going to put that on my darning needle, and I'm following the trail of this stitch right here. And if I look at it, this stitch comes in and comes back up here. And then it comes in here. So let me put it back on my needle. Now, what I would do if this is just a practice piece, I'm not too worried about it. But what I would do now is I will take these ends and I would actually take them. This is the only time it's okay to split your yarn. I would take them and actually kind of split this inside of this yarn, just a teeny little bit. Can you see how I'm doing that? I'm splitting the yarn and going in there and pulling that guy through. And then after I block it, I'll fuzz these out a little bit. After I block it, this should pretty much, especially if it's wool, this would pretty much disappear. this is what you're going to have. You're just going to have this one little piece of end here. And what I do with my one little piece of end is I will close up the whatever gap there may be here. Actually, I wonder if I can show you on, hold on. Here's my sweater. I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well because it's brown, but this is my beginning thread. So if you look at this edge, there we go. You can see there's not much of a jog or anything here. It looks like a pretty nice straight line. So what I'm going to do with this edge is I'll put it on my darning needle, and it's coming. Can you see how when I tug, let me pull this up closer. Can you see when I tug on this thread, I'm actually pulling that loop? See that? So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to come over here to this loop, and I'm going to put this in here to finish off. I should have grabbed a skinnier needle. There we go. That's just going to finish that off. And then I'm going to take this. Now here's my beginning of round marker. I'm going to come back here. And I'm going to loop this. Now, I don't know about you, but often, no matter what I do with the sweaters, I have difficulty trying to find my front and my back, even when I make them different. So you see how I'm looping that down here? I'm going to loop around, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a bow. Then I'm going to loop back around here. And I'm going to leave another bit of a bow. Now I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to attach it so that I come back over on itself. And then I'm going to cut it, but I'm going to leave it a little bit longer. And then after I block it, I'll trim that down. But by putting this little loop-de-loop in here, when I'm wearing my sweater and I go to put my sweater on, all I have to do is look at the back of the neck, find my little loop, and know that that's the back of my neck. Just a way of putting a little tag or a marker in there and making use of that tail. But by doing that now, I don't have any other threads other than the one I'm working with and my marking thread. And it's a lot neater and less muss and fuss to work with. The same way with this guy. By cutting all of this pink stuff and the green stuff out of here, I make it a whole lot neater for me to work. So then I only have my counting thread and my working thread and nothing else to contend with. Now, it's really helpful if you stop every so many rows and lay it down and look for mistakes. So when I'm laying this down, the first thing I'm looking at is my first rib section. And I'm making sure all my little lines of ribbing are uninterrupted, that they don't do any weird wiggles or zigs or zags, and they don't. Then I'm looking at my increase round. Now you can very clearly see, remember how I said to you when I did those increases and I was knitting through the back loop, there were several stitches where I did not knit through the back loop? Do you see what happens when you don't knit through the back loop? You get a bigger, this is how you make lace. You get this bigger opening here. Now some people intentionally do that as the decorative thing. The caution is, as you do each round, each segment, you're not getting these evenly spaced because it's every 2 stitches, then every 3, then every 4. So the pattern changes. Plus, I don't know if you want to have little eyelet holes all the way down the yoke of your sweater. This is the side where I did it continental, and you see how open that is? This is the side where I did it by throwing, and you see those openings are a little bit smaller. That meant my yarn overs when I throw are a little bit smaller, which means if I'm doing lace work, my lace work is going to be more pronounced if I knit it continental than if I knit it throwing. That's just the way I knit. That's not a general rule, but that's just something I need to be aware of when I'm doing lace work. So I'm going to come back and I'll show you how to fix these. That's the one of the things we're going to do. Let me put it this way now, and let me point out, I did start this second segment of ribbing. Let me slide this down a little bit and see if you can see that better. Let's give it a minute. There we go. So my second setting of ribbing, there's the rib, the purl, a rib, purl, rib, purl, rib, purl, rib. Now something's not right in here. Do you see that? I've got a rib here, the purl, but this rib column looks funky. That's not right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a marker right where that funkiness is here. So I'm going to have to look at that. Let's keep going. Rib, purl, rib, purl, rib. Here's the hole that I want to fix. So I'm going to put a marker there. And then I can see I've got a couple holes there that I wanted to fix. So let me put markers where each of those holes are. There's one. And I'm putting the marker in the stitch right where the hole is occurring, right above the hole. Right there. All right, so let's keep going now, looking at the ribbing and making sure there's not another goofy thing. So there's rib, purl, rib, purl. It looks kind of funny here because of the hole, but rib, purl, rib, purl, rib, purl, rib, 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 rib. Okay, everything else looks okay. So on this side, there's 4 things I need to fix. Those 3 holes and this one funky looking thing that I have to figure out what happened there. Do not rip out everything because you've got a spot somewhere where something is wrong. It's so much easier to take a few minutes, fix the one spot, knit it back up, than it is to rip everything out and start over. Because what invariably happens is you start ripping things out, you have a difficulty getting everything back on the needles, and then you still aren't quite sure what row was I on, where am I at, what am I doing, and you end up ripping the whole thing out. Don't do it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to knit my way to that marker. I don't like to waste my knitting time, and I don't like to undo and redo any more than I absolutely have to. My marking thread is on the inside now, so I'm pulling that out of the way. All right, so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do my ribbing until I get to that first marker. All right, I'm going to have to